Chapter 1. The frozen pane Hercule Poirot arrived at Bedlington Manor just as dawn's pale light crept over the snow-draped hills. The carriage had slipped through narrow roads slick with frost, and when he alighted, the cold air brushed his carefully groomed moustaches with an invisible hand. He wrapped his heavy overcoat around himself, noting the low clouds that promised further snowfall. Before him stood the venerable facade of a Georgian estate. Tall, angular windows, stone pillars bearing ornate corbels, and a grand entrance, whose heavy oak doors were frosted at the threshold. He was met by Mrs. Mildred Harcourt, the housekeeper, whose pinched expression betrayed her unease. She guided him through an ebony-panelled hallway. The air scented faintly of beeswax polish and cedar. As they ascended a narrow staircase, the echo of their footsteps muted by plush crimson carpet. Poirot's keen eye caught a single window on the landing, a perfect sheet of crystalline frost coating the glass, despite the roaring fire just beyond. "Remarkable," Poirot murmured. "I have seen many strange phenomena, but a window frozen from within, that is most extraordinary." Mrs. Harcourt's oak-coloured eyes widened. "Monsieur, everyone is baffled. Only last evening Lord Bedlington had a new pane installed here, an antique fragment purportedly from an alchemist's laboratory. By midnight the workmen had departed, and the heating was restored. This morning we discovered the frost." Poirot nodded, stepping closer. He placed a gloved hand near the glass, feeling the unnatural chill emanating in concentric waves. The frost formed an intricate pattern of interlacing ferns, as though someone had drawn arabesques on the pane with a jeweller's precision. The rest of the windows in that corridor were perfectly clear, their glass nearly transparent, revealing oak trees heavy with hoarfrost outside. Only this one bore the alabaster filigree. "Have you attempted to warm it?" Poirot inquired, glancing around. The corridor felt as warm as any drawing-room, yet here time seemed frozen. There was no condensation on the inner surface, and no hint of moisture to suggest a conventional chill. "We hung tapestries before the night's end," Mrs. Harcourt replied. "The servants stoked the fireplaces downstairs, but when the alarm sounded at dawn, this window remained as cold as the tundra outside." Poirot's little grey cells whirred. He considered motive and method. A supernatural occurrence seemed unlikely. He preferred rational causes. Perhaps a chemical agent applied to the glass. Something that could instantly freeze water vapour into ice at room temperature. Yet no residual odour, no ammonia, no chloride, lingered in the air. The corridor smelled of burning oak logs and the faint spice of centuries-old wood. "You said Lord Bedlington acquired this fragment at auction?" Poirot asked as he carefully tapped the glass. The hollow ring suggested hollow space behind the pane, but only faintly. "Tell me more about this alchemical relic." Mrs. Harcourt clasped her hands. "Lord Bedlington returned late last night from London. He raved about the provenance. From a 17th-century alchemist, a manuscript claimed it held the secret of transmutation. He said the glass was once part of a distillation apparatus. He seemed quite enthralled." "A distillation apparatus? Intriguing." Poirot studied her. "And no one else has handled the pane since installation?" "Only the workmen, monsieur, and they left exhausted, remarking that the night air was bitter, but nothing unusual occurred until this morning." He straightened. Very well. Shall speak with Lord Bedlington. Perhaps his observations or his excitement hold a clue." Mrs. Harcourt inclined her head and hurried off. Poirot remained, regarding the frozen pane. He imagined the alchemist's laboratory, brass retorts, bubbling crucibles, candles flickering in shadowy alcoves. Could those ancient flames have imprinted something in the glass, an element still potent after centuries? Or was someone here tonight, manipulating temperature through hidden means? Footsteps above announced Lord Bedlington's descent. He entered the corridor with purposeful strides, cloaked in a velvet smoking jacket. His silver hair caught what little light filtered through the frosted glass. Despite his concern, his eyes glittered with intellectual curiosity rather than fear. He offered a cordial nod to Poirot. "Monsieur Poirot, I trust you have examined my window. You see it as I do. Inexplicable." Poirot bowed slightly. "Indeed, monsieur. I shall endeavour to uncover the reason why warmth refuses to touch this pane. Time, as always, shall reveal the truth." Chapter 2. The Alchemist's Glass. Hercule Poirot followed Lord Bedlington into a richly appointed study, its walls lined with mahogany bookshelves and rare manuscripts displayed under glass. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across oriental carpets and leather-bound volumes. On the large oak desk lay an open ledger, quills, and a crystal decanter of cognac, its amber depths glowing invitingly. Poirot noted, however, that his host's eyes were fixed not on comfort, but on the frozen pane visible through the study's own window, where the frost still clung like a tapestry of ice. "Monsieur Poirot," began Lord Bedlington, removing his gloves and settling into an armchair, "I thank you for coming so promptly. As you've seen, my household is in turmoil. This," he gestured toward the frost-laden window, "is mere surface. I purchased the fragment in London yesterday, convinced it would add historical value to my collection. Yet now it seems to threaten my very peace of mind." His voice trembled slightly, a mixture of pride and unease. Poirot inclined his head. "Please, tell me everything you know about this glass. How was it presented to you? Did the dealers mention any peculiarities?" "Ah, yes. The auctioneer spoke of its provenance. An alchemist named Matthias Grunwald, who worked in Prague during the 1650s. Legend says he pursued the philosopher's stone, experimenting with rare chemicals and arcane processes. The fragment is said to have been part of an alembic, used to distill unconventional compounds. The auction catalogue described the surface as etchings of unknown substance. Though I confess I did not expect literal frost, Lord Bedlington rose and poured 2 glasses of cognac, offering one to Poirot. "I toasted its acquisition last night with the staff. I placed it in this very window. At midnight the heating was turned off, standard practice for the night. By dawn I was called to witness this malady." Poirot accepted the glass politely, swirling the cognac and inhaling its scent. "Did any of your guests handle the fragment before installation? Family, friends, or perhaps your nephew Quentin?" Quentin, a handsome young man, had arrived. Earlier in the day, his accustomed visits often accompanied by spirited debate and occasional rivalry with his uncle over the family estate. Lord Bedlington frowned. Quentin arrived late yesterday, but did not see the pane until after its installation. My niece, Cecilia, was here, but she merely admired it from a distance, remarking on its beauty. Only the 3 workmen and my butler, Hawkins, handled it, till. Chill. Me about Hawkins, Poirot prompted. He would have been the one to oversee its placement. Hawkins has served this family for over 20 years. He is loyal, to a fault, one might say. If anyone could be trusted with precious artifacts, it is he. He harangued the workmen to ensure the fragment was placed perfectly flush. I believe he handled it once last night to adjust its alignment. Poirot's little grey cells buzzed. Have you seen Hawkins since morn? Indeed. He attended me at breakfast, but I perceived a look of concern in his eyes, as though he disapproved of the entire acquisition. He suggested caution, claiming old property might harbour more than mere history. Ah, Poirot said softly. A warning unheeded can sometimes foreshadow disaster. Madame Harcourt, the housekeeper, did she mention if Hawkins spoke to her? He hurried off after breakfast. I assumed he returned to his duties. Surely he is tending to the kitchens by now. Poirot set down his glass and rose. I should speak with Hawkins. Meanwhile, you mentioned your nephew Quentin arrived late. Did Quentin have an argument or a dispute with anyone concerning the drawing-room or this corridor? Lord Bedlington hesitated. Quentin and I quarrelled, mildly, about my estate plans. He believes I should sell off smaller properties, whereas I wish to preserve our heritage. But nothing more than spirited disagreement. He spoke to no one else about the window. He was curious, of course, but he paused, as though recollecting something. Now that I think of it, at midnight I heard raised voices outside my study door. I assumed it was a dispute between the workmen. They left too abruptly. Speaking of frostbite and cold, Poirot's brow furrowed. And you did not investigate the voices? Lord Bedlington shook his head. I was engrossed in reading Grunwald's journal notes. Ancient scrawlings, cryptic language about beyond nature's law. I paid little heed to the men. Very good, Poirot replied, stepping toward the window. He placed a gloved fingertip upon the frozen surface. Though warm air swirled around him, the spot beneath his finger remained frigid, an icy shock seeping through cotton. He noted the frost's design, its fern-like filigree symmetrical, yet asymmetrical, impossible for ordinary crystallization. After I examine Hawkins and the workmen, I will return, Poirot said. Tell me, does anyone else in the household display unusual behaviour? Your cook, perhaps? Or any groundskeeper who spends nights near the greenhouse? Lord Bedlington considered. My groundskeeper Parsons sleeps in the lodge quite distant. From here, I have seen nothing odd from him. The cook, Mrs. Daniels, mentioned the kitchens felt colder than usual last night, but she suspected a draught from the west wing. No one else complained. Poirot nodded. Thank you, monsieur. I shall begin with Hawkins and the workmen. Nothing escapes the truth when one follows every clue, no matter how small. Lord Bedlington offered a weary smile. I trust your judgment, Poirot. This mystery, absurd as it seems, threatens to unravel rational thought itself. I pray you find a logical answer. Poirot bowed. Rationality, mon ami, is my constant companion. I bid you good day. Stepping away from the desk and the cognac, Poirot exited the study, determined to trace each step of the Payne's journey, convinced that behind this alchemical puzzle lay nothing more magical than methodical human machination. Chapter 3. The servant and the workman Poirot descended the grand staircase, his polished shoes silent on the carpet. The manor seemed warm compared to the cold outside, yet Poirot detected a subtle draught. Approaching the servants' wing, he paused as a lantern flickered near the pantry. Inside, Hawkins stood by a wooden table, reviewing ledgers. He appeared, tense, bow-tie askew. When he saw Poirot, he set down his pen. Poirot removed his gloves and placed them on a stool. "Monsieur Poirot," Hawkins said quietly, "how may I help you?" "I wish to discuss last night's pain installation. I oversaw that operation," Poirot replied. Hawkins nodded. "Yes, I arranged for George Wallace, Thomas Ridge and Philip Moore to replace the old window with the fragment. They arrived at 9, carrying the glass wrapped in wool. They wore gloves." Poirot inclined his head. "And after fitting the pane, they levelled it, sealing the frame with putty. I inspected the mouldings. All seemed normal when they left around 11. Hawkins explained. "Yes. Did Ridge complain? He said his fingers felt strangely numb when handling the glass, but blamed the cold. They left soon after." Poirot considered Hawkins's words. He knew that numbness beyond ordinary cold hinted at something peculiar. Yet no frost had appeared until morning. He tapped the floorboards, warm beneath his feet despite the corridor's low temperature. Something was amiss. "Did you inspect the corridor then?" he asked. "I did. No frost. It looked ordinary. I returned indoors." "Where? Did they lodge?" Poirot asked. "In the stone lodge by the stables. They retired around midnight." Poirot nodded. "Thank you." He left the pantry, noting a slight chill along the corridor floorboards. Outside, fresh snow drifted over the grounds. Poirot wrapped his scarf and hurried to the lodge. Underfoot, the snow crunched. Smoke curled from the chimney. He tapped twice, and George Wallace opened the door. "Monsieur Poirot," Wallace murmured. "Please, come in." Inside was humble. 3 cots, a table, and a stove glowing warmly. Ridge and Moore sat by the stove, their faces pale. "Gentlemen," Poirot began, "when you carried the pane, did you feel unusual cold?" Ridge looked to Wallace. "Yes. The moment I touched the glass, it felt like holding ice. My fingers tingled despite the gloves." Moore nodded. "We sealed it and stepped back. No frost, but the chill remained." Poirot lifted an eyebrow. "Did you use any coolants, chemicals or ice, while handling the glass?" Wallace shook his head. "No, monsieur, only putty and sealant." "Did you touch the interior pane after installing?" "No. We wiped gloves on our coats and left." Poirot paused. "Ridge, your satchel, what did it contain?" Ridge's cheeks reddened. "Bread, cheese, and a flask of water, nothing else." "Upon leaving the corridor, did you notice any sounds or draughts?" Moore replied. "Only wind against the windows, no draughts inside. We returned to the lodge quickly." Poirot nodded. "Thank you. Inform Hawkins if you recall anything." He stepped outside into the cold. Standing in the swirling snow, he reflected on Ridge's numb fingers, the absence of frost at night, and the sealed pane. He decided to revisit the corridor immediately, to examine footprints and the frame's edges. Retracing his steps, Poirot entered the manor and approached the corridor. The floorboards creaked underfoot, though no voices stirred. He knelt and studied the surface for impressions. Near the window, the plush carpet was disturbed, subtle depressions that hinted at a footprint, possibly from someone entering after the workman departed. Carefully, he slid a small wax wedge along the window frame's lower edge. It met slight resistance, suggesting something concealed behind the putty. He noted that the glass's edge had a whisper of a gap, no more than a hair's breadth wide. Hercule stood upright, brushing snow from his coat. The corridor lay silent save for his breathing. Each clue, the carpet indent, the metallic residue, and ridge's numbness, wove a tapestry of both human intent and hidden science. Poirot smiled imperceptibly. "Patience, mon ami," he murmured. "The truth is closer with each step." With resolve, he departed for the study to compare these findings with Grunwald's journal, determined to pin down the secret of the frozen window. Chapter 4. Secrets within Grunwald's journal. Poirot returned to Lord Bedlington's study, closing the door quietly behind him. The fire crackled, its embers glowing like watchful eyes. He seated himself at the oak desk, opening the leather-bound journal of Matthias Grunwald that lay among scattered papers. The manuscript's pages were brittle, with age ink faded to sepia. Each line of Grunwald's cramped looping script beckoned Poirot's intellect, promising insights into the mysterious alchemical fragment. He lit a candle, tilting it to cast light across the page. The journal entry corresponding to Anno 1654 described the alchemist's experiments with mercurial salts and rare plant extracts. A particular passage caught Poirot's attention. Grunwald noted that his glass apparatus developed an affinity for winter's breath, freezing contents in defiance of external warmth. The entry concluded cryptically, "A single whisper, a secret thin as air, and the cold will claim the spirit." Poirot paused to reflect. It suggested that Grunwald's glass possessed unusual thermal properties, perhaps influenced by a hidden compound or inscription. He turned pages carefully until he found a rough sketch of a window pane marked with arcane symbols etched around its perimeter. The illustration bore a small annotation. "Inscribe runes. Cold shall emerge." Poirot examined the sketch, comparing it to the actual fragment he had seen. Though the fragment in Bedlington Manor lacked visible runes, Poirot suspected an almost invisible micro-etching, perhaps only perceptible under magnification. He tapped the desk, recalling the faint metallic residue he had felt near the pane's frame. Could those markings have been abrading the etching, leaving minute particles? He blew out smoke from a small cigar, considering that the glass might react to ambient humidity differently when treated with a chemical layer. Grunwald's note mentioned alchemical varnish made of powdered obsidian and saltpeter. Poirot flicked through the journal until he discovered a recipe. Mix obsidian, saltpeter, and essence of wintergreen. Paint upon glass, exposed to moonlight, beneath a caution. Beware the man who seeks more than truth. His lust for power may chill the heart. The detective's keen mind connected the recipe to Ridge's numbness when touching the fragment. Maybe the glass had been recoated or tampered with after leaving Grunwald's workshop, intensifying its freezing effect. He carefully folded the journal, resolving to procure a magnifying glass and a sample of the residue. However, his thoughts turned to Lord Bedlington's nephew Quentin. Early disagreements over the estate suggested potential motive. Could Quentin have sought to frighten his uncle into changing his will? A supernatural chill might unsettle the lord more profoundly than a heated argument. Poirot remembered hearing raised voices at midnight, possibly Ridge, Wallace, or Moore, arguing about the glass's potency. But Quentin's motive would require access and knowledge. Had he studied Grunwald's law? Unlikely, unless a copy of the journal had circulated. Setting the journal aside, Poirot fetched a magnifying lens from a drawer and illuminated the desk's surface. He examined the residue collected on his wax wedge from the corridor window. Under magnification, the particles glinted with tiny crystalline shapes, perhaps saltpeter crystals mixed with carbon flecks. If smeared along the edge of the glass, these could catalyze rapid freezing when in contact with moisture. Poirot mused that an atmospheric shift, like overnight humidity, would trigger a spontaneous ice formation, even in a heated room. With these revelations, Poirot felt a renewed sense of direction. He would need to confirm whether the fragment bore traces of alchemical varnish and runes. But first, he decided to question the butler, Hawkins, more thoroughly. Perhaps Hawkins had seen someone in the study late at night. Poirot left the study, descending to the servants' quarters once more. He found Hawkins dusting silver candlesticks in a dimly lit antechamber. "Hawkins," Poirot said politely, "I have examined Grunwald's journal, and believe the glass may bear hidden etchings. Did you, or anyone else, notice markings before installation?" Hawkins frowned. "I examined the pane in its wooden crate, sir. It was covered in grime, blackened by time. I cleaned it with turpentine and cloth, but I did not inspect closely for inscriptions." "And after installation?" Poirot pressed. "Did any servant examine it under stronger light? Perhaps Lord Bedlington shone a candle across its surface." Hawkins coughed. "I recall Lord Bedlington holding a candle close, peering into it, murmuring about faint lines. He said he saw tiny scratches, but he thought them mere wear from age." Poirot's eyes brightened. "Precisely. Those scratches may be the runes. Did Quentin linger near the study after midnight? Mystery solved, not by magic, but by the immutable forces of human nature and the little grey cells." The sunlight glinted on his bowler hat, and he knew that even when winter's darkness looms, truth and goodwill can rekindle warmth in the coldest of hearts. Chapter 7. After the thaw, snow still lay in patches across the grounds of Bedlington Manor, its edges softened by the morning sun. Poirot stood on the terrace, gazing at the footprint-laden slush that marked the passage from the lodge to the main entrance. He had paused before departing, wishing to savour the calm that followed the storm, both literal and figurative. The manor no longer felt fraught with tension. Laughter drifted from within as Quentin joined staff in clearing the path. And Lord Bedlington stood nearby, offering a steady hand when necessary. Though winter's chill lingered, warmth ruled inside. Poirot descended the steps and approached Lord Bedlington. The lord was alert now, eyes bright with renewed purpose. He extended his hand in greeting. "Monsieur Poirot, I trust your journey onward will be pleasant." This morning's thaw brought more than melting ice. It restored harmony to my household. Poirot inclined his head, brushing snow from his coat. That is gratifying to hear, monsieur. The human heart, like glass, may bear fractures only seen when pressure is applied. Yet, with care, it can be made whole again. He gestured toward Quentin, who paused in a nearby conversation with Hawkins. Your nephew demonstrates remorse, tempered by responsibility. That is a promising sign. Lord Bedlington surveyed Quentin with pride. He has begun his letter of apology to the staff, and after that we shall review estate plans together. I believe he will prove a wise steward of our family's legacy. He nodded toward the manor's facade. Come, I shall show you how the thaw looked from within. Inside, the drawing-room smelled of scorched logs and pine. Poirot noted the window, once frozen, now gleamed untouched. Sunlight streamed through, illuminating the clear pane as though nothing had ever been amiss. Mrs. Harcourt stood by a side table, pouring Earl Grey into fine porcelain. She offered a cup to Poirot with a grateful smile. Monsieur, she murmured, your visit lifted a burden we did not realize weighed upon us until it was gone. Poirot accepted the tea, pressing his fingertips to warm porcelain. Emotion can chill more deeply than frost, madam. I am content if my efforts restored peace. He lifted the cup in a silent toast to her words. As they conversed, Quentin entered carrying a sealed envelope. Uncle, the letters are complete. I have expressed my apologies personally to each member of the household. He offered a respectful bow to Mrs. Harcourt, then turned to Poirot. I cannot thank you enough, Monsieur Poirot. Without your insight, I might have caused irreparable harm. Poirot nodded gently. Your contrition is evident, Master Quentin. Let this be a lesson in the power of intent versus action. Fear untempered by reason can freeze the spirit more surely than any chemical. Quentin lowered his gaze. I shall remember, monsieur. After tea, Poirot requested a moment with Dr. Whittaker, who had arrived earlier to collect samples. In the greenhouse adjacent to the manor, fragrant with the scent of early violets, Dr. Whittaker examined shards of the original fragment under a portable microscope. Poirot observed the doctor's careful notes. Remarkable, Dr. Whittaker murmured. The runes etched along the edge are too fine to see with the naked eye. Combined with the saltpeter varnish, they could catalyze rapid freezing, yet the core glass remains unaltered, silent witness to Grunwald's craft. Poirot placed a hand on a nearby pot of cyclamen. Monsieur Grunwald's legacy endures in both mystery and method. It is fortunate that the glass's powers were limited by human intervention and not by nature alone. Dr. Whittaker nodded. I shall deliver these findings to Lord Bedlington. He may choose to preserve the fragment under special conditions or donate it to a museum. Its history is worth safeguarding, Poirot smiled. Indeed, many seek relics of the past, but few understand that the greatest treasures lie in human understanding, not superstition. With formal farewells exchanged, Poirot prepared to depart. Outside, the carriage awaited on the drive, its horses stamping in mild agitation. Quentin approached, offering Poirot a mounted leather case. Monsieur, I wish to present you with this, my grandfather's pocket watch, to remember Bedlington by. The ornate gold case bore initials etched decades ago. Poirot's eyes shimmered with gratitude. "You honour me, Master Quentin. I accept this token with humility." Lord Bedlington joined them. "May our paths cross again, Monsieur Poirot. You shall always be welcome at Bedlington Manor." Poirot inclined his head. "You have my sincere thanks, monsieur. I depart confident that the warmth of family will endure far beyond winter's touch." As the carriage rolled away, Poirot gazed back at the stately silhouette of the manor against a brightening sky. He reflected on how a single pane of glass had revealed the fragility and resilience of the human spirit. The little grey cells, he knew, would someday puzzle over another enigma, but for now the memory of frost and its thaw would remain, a testament to the power of understanding over fear, and to the bonds that hold families together when the cold wind howls outside. Chapter 8. A night of shadows the morning after the thaw dawned clear and cold, the sky a pale wash of winter blue. Bedlington Manor stirred to life as staff and family emerged from their rooms, exchanging greetings and relishing the promise of continued peace. Yet, as the first light filled the corridors, Mrs. Harcourt paused at the display stand in the drawing-room, her breath catching in her throat. Where the alchemist's fragment of glass had rested, she saw an empty velvet cushion. Horror lanced through her. The precious relic was missing. Within moments, Lord Bedlington and Quentin arrived, drawn by her alarmed cry. Quentin's face drained of colour as he peered at the vacant display. "Impossible," he whispered. "I locked it securely last night." Mrs. Harcourt shook her head, voice trembling. "Something or someone removed it under cover of darkness." She clutched the sides of the stand, white-knuckled. "I inspected it before retiring. The velvet lining was untouched then." Poirot, summoned post-haste from his guest-rooms, approached with measured steps. He observed the empty space calmly, eyes narrowed. The velvet cushion was pristine, save for a faint indentation where the fragment had rested. He knelt, studying the glass-topped cabinet's lock. The catch, he noted, bore no signs of forced entry. The metal catch was not bent nor scratched. It seemed someone had unlocked it with a key. He pressed a gloved fingertip along the rim and detected a single fingerprint barely visible against the polished wood. "Monsieur," Lord Bedlington said anxiously, "what do you surmise?" Poirot straightened, tucking a wisp of hair behind his ear. "It appears our alchemical glass has vanished, but the method used was stealth rather than force. The absence of damage suggests an insider's touch, someone with access to keys, or familiarity with the manor's secrets." Quentin ran a hand through his hair, distraught. "But who could have taken it? Only we and the staff know of its location. None of the servants would dare." Poirot raised a gloved finger. "Let us not leap to conclusions. I shall interview everyone and examine all clues. Meanwhile, the fragment must be found." He directed Mrs. Harcourt to gather Hawkins, Mrs. Daniels, and Parsons. One by one they appeared, drawn by the urgent summons in the drawing-room. Poirot observed each quietly. Hawkins, the devoted butler, his face grave yet unwavering. Mrs. Daniels, the cook, whose hands trembled as she clutched her apron. And Parsons, the groundskeeper, scarcely recovered from the previous day's ordeal. With frost and snow, he addressed them politely. "Madam, does any of you hold a copy of the key to this cabinet?" he inquired. gesturing toward the display stand. Hawkins stepped forward. "Only I, monsieur, and Lord Bedlington himself possess keys. The rest of us have been explicitly forbidden access." Mrs. Daniels swallowed. "I have never handled the key, Monsieur Poirot. I only prepared meals downstairs." Parsons shook his head. "Nor I. I was in the lodge clearing snow. I did not return until breakfast." Poirot's gaze settled on Hawkins. "Monsieur Hawkins, did you hear anything unusual during the night? Footsteps in the hall, perhaps?" Hawkins's eyes flickered, and he bowed his head. I thought I heard whispered voices near the drawing-room around 2 o'clock. I assumed Lord and Master Quentin were awake, discussing estate matters quietly. When I passed by, the door was ajar, but I did not enter, not wishing to interrupt." Poirot nodded thoughtfully. He turned to Quentin. "Master Quentin, did you linger in the drawing-room after retiring? Could you have misplaced the fragment inadvertently?" Quentin squared his shoulders. "No, Monsieur Poirot. I placed it securely, and left immediately. If someone entered, I would have heard the door open." Poirot walked to the door and examined its latch. It was slightly ajar, as Hawkins described. Yet the lock remained intact. He pressed his ear to the wood and caught a faint draught from the corridor, though the hall felt warm. He placed a gloved hand upon the banister, noting fresh water stains on the newel post, tracks of melted snow, perhaps from a person entering through a side entrance. "Someone may have accessed the drawing-room from the garden," Poirot observed. "The west window was unlocked last night, was it not?" Lord Bedlington hesitated. "I thought I had bolted it, but with the storm I left it slightly ajar for fresh air." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Then someone could have—" Hawkins hesitated. "I saw Master Quentin in the corridor around 11:30. He paused by the window as if inspecting it. I thought he marvelled at its beauty, but he looked uneasy. He hastened away when he noticed me." Poirot thanked him. He now had evidence placing Quentin at the scene after the workman departed. Combined with the possibility of alchemical varnish, this pointed to deliberate manipulation. He returned to the study, resuming his analysis of Grunwald's recipes. Tomorrow he would arrange for a chemical test. For now he would rest. As he extinguished the candle, he whispered to the shadows, "The little grey cells have discerned the hidden pattern. The truth shall be revealed, mon ami." Chapter 5. A confrontation in the snow. Poirot awoke before dawn to the rumble of the Dewag storm. He dressed quietly and descended to the study. The frozen pane remained unchanged, though the corridor beyond seemed warmer by lamplight. He poured tea and contemplated his next steps. He needed to question Quentin and verify if runes on the glass could be activated by a catalyst. He decided to seek Lord Bedlington's friend, Dr. Whitaker, to examine residue. But first, Quentin. He found Quentin in the billiards room practicing shots. The nephew looked pale, burdened by unseen guilt. Poirot approached, his cane tapping the floor. "Master Quentin," Poirot said calmly, "might we speak about last night?" Quentin set aside his cue. "Of course, Monsieur Poirot." "Why did you observe the window in the corridor near midnight?" Quentin's gaze dropped. "I heard voices from the study and went to see. I saw the workmen struggling. One complained of freezing hands. I lingered to ensure no one was hurt." And did you handle the glass?" Quentin's lips tightened. I examined the edges briefly. I saw faint scratches and feared the glass was cursed. I withdrew quickly. "So, you did not apply anything to the pane?" Quentin nodded. "No. My disagreement with my uncle was about finances, not sabotage." Poirot thanked him. He crossed to the corridor, collected fresh residue with a wax wedge, and noted faint footprints leading to the study. He pocketed the wedge and went to Dr. Whittaker. In Whittaker's laboratory, jars of minerals and reagents lined shelves. Poirot presented the residue. Dr. Whittaker crushed crystals, mixed them with reagents, and watched the mixture hiss and cool, causing condensation on the beaker. "Saltpeter is present," Dr. Whittaker said. "Combined with certain oils, it lowers the freezing point. So no curse, just chemistry. But who prepared the glass? If someone knew Grunwald's recipes, they could recoat it. That requires resources. Ridge, Wallace and Moore lacked them. But Quentin studies chemistry at Cambridge. Poirot left, resolve steeled. Returning to the manor under heavier snowfall, he found the halls nearly deserted. In the corridor, Hawkins paused, dusting a portrait. "Hawkins," Poirot called softly. "I have a question." Hawkins bowed. "Monsieur." "Did you notice Quentin leaving the study at midnight carrying any container?" Hawkins frowned. "I saw him near the cabinets, but not with a flask." Hawkins hesitated. "I recall him clutching a small leather satchel, but I thought it contained cigars." "He could have concealed chemicals," Poirot replied. Poirot ascended to Quentin's room. Quentin sat by the window, staring at the snow. Poirot closed the door and revealed his knowledge: saltpeter and chemistry studies. Quentin's eyes widened. "You suspect me?" "I suspect motive and opportunity combined," Poirot replied. "Explain." Tears formed. "I only wished to frighten my uncle, not harm him. I sprinkled a mixture on the glass after midnight to chill it temporarily, hoping he would reconsider selling properties. But the glass remained frozen all morning." Quentin's shoulders slumped. "I used too much. I did not expect it to persist." Poirot nodded. "Monsieur Bedlington must know, but I will ask discretion." Quentin exhaled. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot." Later, Poirot stood in the corridor near the frozen pane. He reflected on human frailty, how ambition and desperation can corrupt even the most cultured. The frost would thaw soon, and truth, like spring, would dispel the chill. At dawn he would meet Lord Bedlington and reveal the truth, guiding him to pardon his remorseful nephew. For even when winter's curse seems unrelenting, reconciliation can restore warmth to the coldest hearts. Indeed, as always. Chapter 6. Resolution in the Hearth. The following morning, a fragile calm hung over Bedlington Manor. Soft sunlight filtered through clouds, illuminating the frost patterns on the frozen pane. Poirot entered the drawing-room, where Lord Bedlington awaited him, seated beside the hearth. The fire cast a warm glow, flickering across the lord's troubled face. Mrs. Harcourt hovered nearby, her expression a blend of hope and apprehension. Poirot set aside his gloves, smoothing his moustache before speaking. "Monsieur Bedlington," he began, "I have discovered the cause of your window's unnatural chill. He recounted his conversations, the residue analysis by Dr. Whittaker, Hawkins's testimony regarding Quentin's presence, and Quentin's own confession. As he spoke, Lord Bedlington's eyes widened, alternating between grief and relief. When Poirot finished, silence filled the room, broken only by the crackle of logs. Lord Bedlington clasped his hands. "My nephew! He would stoop so low to frighten me. He knows I love him, yet this deceit." His voice trembled with equal parts anger and sorrow. Poirot inclined his head gently. "Master Quentin acted out of desperation, monsieur. He sought to preserve the estate as he understood it could be lost. His methods were misguided rather than malicious." The lord's gaze softened, his posture slackening as he absorbed Poirot's words. At that moment, Quentin entered, his shoulders hunched, eyes reddened from lack of sleep and remorse. He bowed to Poirot, then to his uncle. "Uncle, I confess my actions. I intended no lasting harm. I merely wished to remind you of your promise, to keep the smaller estates intact." He paused, voice wavering. When the frost did not thaw, I realized I had gone too far. Lord Bedlington rose slowly, crossing to stand before Quentin. For a heartbeat, the room held its breath. Then the lord placed a shaking hand on his nephew's shoulder. "Quentin, my boy, you frightened me. Yes, but I see now the depth of your concern. You love our heritage as I do. Your method was misguided, but your intent I understand." He embraced Quentin, tears gathering in his eyes. "We shall repair the damage together, both to the estate and to our bond." Poirot stepped aside, offering a small nod. He turned toward the window. With Lord Bedlington's assent, he placed a gloved hand on the frozen pane. From his pocket he produced a small vial containing a neutralizing solution prepared by Dr. Whittaker. He applied it carefully to the outer edges, where the saltpeter crystals had been affixed. Almost instantly, condensation formed, and the ice began to melt. The intricate fern-like patterns dissolving into droplets, sliding down the glass. The warmth of the room, reinforced by the clearing sky, completed the thaw. As the frost vanished, Lord Bedlington exhaled deeply, as though a weight had lifted from his chest. "It is as if a curse has been lifted," he murmured. Poirot allowed, himself a modest smile. "Nothing supernatural here, mon ami, only the clever use of chemistry and human emotion." He turned to Quentin, whose face had brightened at the sight of the melting ice. "Master Quentin," Poirot said, "you must accept responsibility. A father's mercy does not absolve one of accountability. You shall compose a letter of apology to every household member whose peace was disrupted." Quentin bowed his head. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot, I shall do so immediately." Mrs. Harcourt, who had listened with rapt attention, stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on Quentin's arm. "We are all family here," she said gently. "Your actions, though troubling, came from love." Hawkins emerged from the hallway, his posture respectful. Poirot nodded to him. "Hawkins, I thank you for your candour. Your loyalty to your master is admirable." Hawkins inclined his head, relief flickering in his eyes. Later that day, Lord Bedlington convened a small gathering in the drawing-room. The senior staff, Mrs. Harcourt, Hawkins, the cook Mrs. Daniels, and groundskeeper Parsons, assembled, faces a mixture of curiosity and anxiety. Lord Bedlington addressed them in a steady voice. He recounted Quentin's confession and his own role in dismissing concerns about the glass. He expressed gratitude for their dedication and apologized for any distress caused. Then, in a gesture of reconciliation, he announced a donation to the local village for winter relief, using a portion of funds previously earmarked for selling a small estate Quentin had so vehemently defended. A gentle murmur of approval rose from the staff. Mrs. Harcourt's lips curved into a smile, and Hawkins exhaled a breath he seemed to have held since the frost first appeared. Poirot observed from a window seat, cradling a cup of tea. As the gathering dispersed, Lord Bedlington invited Poirot to once more inspect the window, now clear and warm to the touch. Beyond, the snow had melted into slush, and winter's hold was loosening with each passing hour. Before departing, Poirot offered a final reflection. "Monsieur Bedlington, the lesson here is that fear and miscommunication can freeze the relationship between family members more swiftly than any chemical. It is only through honesty and compassion that warmth returns." The Lord nodded, gratitude shining in his eyes. He shook Poirot's hand firmly. "Your wisdom is as priceless as any artifact, Monsieur Poirot. Thank you." As Poirot departed into the crisp afternoon air, carriage wheels crunching over the thawing drive, he allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Another entered from the outside, collected the glass, and departed without breaking locks. A clever plan indeed. He stepped outside, gathering Mrs. Harcourt to witness the west window. In the snow, he found footprints leading from the garden path to the window, then back toward the hedge, small booted prints smeared with mud, indicating a hurried escape. He traced them to a gap in a low stone wall, dividing the property from the adjacent woods. Returning to the drawing-room, Poirot addressed the assembled household. "The culprit is neither among you as I first suspected, though one of you may have unwittingly provided access. We must determine who knew of the unlocked window and had motive to steal the fragment." Mrs. Harcourt's eyes brimmed with tears. "Monsieur, I trust none of my staff would betray Lord Bedlington so." Poirot regarded her kindly. "Your loyalty is admirable, yet motive needn't be spite. It may be greed. The alchemical fragment is of great value to private collectors." He eyed Quentin. "You, Master Quentin, have no reason to resecure it. In fact, you would wish it preserved here. But someone else may covet it." Hawkins cleared his throat. "Monsieur, might I suggest that Mr. Ridge and his colleagues, the workmen, understood the glass's properties? They left this morning after repairs. Could one of them have returned?" Poirot considered. They lodged near the stables, and their departure was observed at first light. But if one returned under cover of darkness, he could have slipped through the garden. Yet such a man would struggle with the cold. Remember their complaints of frostbite. He would hesitate to handle the glass again. He turned to Parsons. "You clear snow each night. Did you notice anyone loitering by the windows?" Parsons shook his head. "Only shadows among the trees, monsieur. I thought it perhaps a fox." Poirot's gaze returned to Lord Bedlington. "Did any visitor know of your alchemical interest? Someone in London, perhaps, who would pay handsomely?" Bedlington frowned. "A certain antiquarian, Mr. Halford, requested to view the fragment. He left before dinner." Poirot's pupils narrowed. "Where does Mr. Halford reside?" Cambridge, but he stayed here yesterday until dusk," Lord Bedlington replied. Poirot smiled. "Then, monsieur, we have our suspect. He learned of the glass's location, returned after dark, slipped in through the west window, and stole the fragment, knowing it would fetch a handsome price among collectors. I suggest we proceed immediately to apprehend him." As servants hurried to fetch coats and wrap scarves, Poirot stood by the window, imagining Halford's furtive movements in the moonless night. Once again, the little grey cells had unmasked human craftiness hidden behind a veneer of culture. The alchemical enigma might belong to another, but Poirot would see justice served, ensuring that what belonged to Bedlington Manor remained safe, and that those who prized truth over superstition prevailed. Chapter 9. The Chase Through Moonlit Woods. Under the pallid glow of a waning moon, Hercule Poirot and Lord Bedlington slipped quietly from the manor, accompanied by Hawkins and Parsons. Wrapped in heavy cloaks, they moved along the garden path that led toward the low stone wall where footprints had emerged in the melting snow. The cold night air bit at their faces, and each breath yielded a faint mist as they pressed forward, determined to recover the stolen alchemical fragment before it vanished into shadow. Poirot paused by the west window, touching its frame. "The prints lead into the woods. We must follow them swiftly yet cautiously. Monsieur Bedlington, Hawkins, keep close. Parsons, you know this terrain. Guide us without hesitation." Parsons nodded, lifting his lantern high. Its flickering light revealed a narrow trail of booted footprints, marred by patches of mud and lingering snow. The group advanced, mindful of hidden tree roots and uneven ground. The forest was silent except for the occasional rustle of wind through skeletal branches, as though nature itself watched their pursuit with bated breath. "Do you think he went far?" Lord Bedlington whispered, eyes scanning the shadows. "Depends on how well he knew this property," Poirot replied. "Mr. Halford is cunning. He likely planned a swift exit. We must not lose his trail." The footprints rose and fell along a slight incline. Poirot observed that each step sank slightly deeper into softer earth, suggesting fatigue or haste on Halford's part. He bent to inspect a patch of disturbed soil where a broken twig lay. The lantern's glow revealed a small smear of reddish-brown, a blanchissure, piece of cloth torn from a glove or coat. "Notice here," Poirot murmured, pointing with a gloved finger. "Our quarry fled with urgency, perhaps alarmed by a misstep. The torn fabric may indicate he stumbled or brushed against a branch. Follow." Parsons led them deeper into the forest, the moonlight filtering through bare branches to cast ghostly patterns on the snow-dappled ground. The night grew colder, each step enveloped in a silence so profound it seemed to swallow sound. Lord Bedlington drew his cloak tighter, his breath shallow as fear mingled with determination. Suddenly, a whisper of movement stirred in the underbrush to their left. Hawkins halted, signalling everyone to freeze. Poirot raised a hand and stepped forward. Lantern held aloft, he whispered, "Shh, listen." From the darkness emerged a slender figure, stumbling along the path, clutching a small parcel tightly against his chest. The man's breath came in ragged gasps, and his dark coat bore a crimson tear, matching the fragment of cloth Poirot had found. Halford's eyes widened as he noticed Poirot's lantern. "You!" he spat, fear and defiance mingling in his voice. "You dare pursue me into the night?" Poirot's demeanour remained calm. "Monsieur Halford, your flight serves no purpose. The alchemical glass you stole belongs to Lord Bedlington. Surrender it, and no harm will come to you." His accent was precise, his tone gentle, yet unyielding. Halford shook his head, eyes darting. "You know nothing of its value. I sold it already, slipped it to a collector near Cambridge. It is beyond your reach." Lord Bedlington stepped forward. "You lie. My friends saw you leave here. That fragment is precious heritage, not merchandise. Return it at once." Halford's defiance faltered. He clutched the parcel tighter and took a step back. I cannot face the profits lost. I needed the money, debts, obligations." Poirot advanced, his small stature belying the force of his determination. "You traded heritage for greed, yet remorse can be your salvation. Hand over the glass now." He extended his hand. For a heartbeat, Halford wavered, torn between desperation and conscience. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Slowly, he unfolded the parcel and revealed the glass fragment, wrapped carefully in oilcloth. The intricate runes and glint of saltpeter residue were unmistakable. Lord Bedlington exhaled, relief and indignation warring on his face as he reclaimed the pain. "You will answer for this insult to my family's legacy," he said, voice trembling. Halford lowered his gaze. "I am sorry, my lord." "Not sorry enough," Bedlington interrupted. "We shall proceed to the manor and present this to the magistrate." He turned to Poirot. "Your insight and tenacity brought this to light. I am deeply grateful." Poirot nodded. Justice need neither be swift nor vengeful. It must be measured and tempered with humanity. He addressed Halford. "You will have your chance to make amends. Now, let us return." As they retraced their steps toward the manor, the moon dipped behind clouds, enveloping the woods in deeper darkness. Yet in their minds, a quiet light glowed. The stolen fragment was returned, and Bedlington's legacy remained intact. In Poirot's chest, warmth blossomed, knowing that even in night's coldest depths, truth and goodwill could guide one safely home. Chapter 10. Reflections by the Hearth. The morning sun cast pale gold upon Bedlington Manor, illuminating each frost-twinned branch of the ancient oak that stood sentinel beside the entrance. Inside, the servants moved with subdued purpose, their earlier relief tempered with solemn respect for the events of the previous night. In the drawing-room, Lord Bedlington had convened a small gathering. Hawkins, Mrs. Harcourt, Dr. Whitaker, and a summoned magistrate from the neighbouring village. They assembled around the hearth, where the recovered alchemical fragment lay wrapped in soft linen upon a velvet cushion. Poirot arrived shortly after, removing his gloves and bowing slightly. To the assembled party, the magistrate, a lean man with keen eyes, greeted him with formal courtesy. "Monsieur Poirot, I understand you were instrumental in the recovery of this item." Poirot inclined his head. "I merely sought to restore what had been taken. The alchemical glass belongs to Lord Bedlington, not to clandestine collectors." He gestured toward the fragment, its surface gleaming in the morning light. The intricate runes, now faintly visible, caught the eye of every spectator. Dr. Whitaker knelt beside the window to adjust the light, allowing the sun to highlight the micro-etchings. "Indeed, The magistrate said. "The law must ensure such artifacts remain where they can be studied and appreciated responsibly. Monsieur Halford will face charges for theft, though I will recommend leniency if he cooperates fully." He turned to Halford, who stood near the door, confined by the constable. Halford's shoulders sagged, penitent lines etched upon his face. "You understand the implications of your crime?" Halford nodded, voice hoarse. "Yes, your worship. I wish only to atone." The magistrate gestured, and the constable stepped forward to place Halford under a nominal restraint, enough to symbolize his guilt without harshness. As Halford passed Poirot, he whispered, "I am grateful for your mercy, monsieur." Poirot offered a gentle nod, his dark eyes unreadable. Once Halford was escorted away, Lord Bedlington rose from his seat, his expression a mixture of relief and contemplation. "Monsieur Poirot, I cannot express adequately my gratitude. The alchemical glass is central to my collection, but more so, preserving it has reminded me of family and legacy's true value." Poirot sipped his tea, observing the interplay of light and shadow across the room. "Mon Dieu, monsieur, you have endured betrayal and regained trust in rapid succession. It is a lesson in vigilance and compassion, both necessary to safeguard what we cherish." Mrs. Harcourt handed Poirot a fresh cup. "Your presence has been a blessing, Monsieur Poirot. You've restored order where chaos threatened. The household looks to the future now with renewed hope." Dr. Whitaker joined them by the window. "And science has vindicated itself over superstition. Grunwald's law indeed contains marvels, but only an informed mind can separate genuine wonder from manipulation. I will catalogue the fragment under strict conditions, ensuring its preservation for posterity." He secured the glass in a lockbox provided by Lord Bedlington, sealing it with a wax emblem bearing the Bedlington crest. Poirot rose, tipping his hat. "I must continue my journey, but first a small word with Quentin." Quentin, who had been standing quietly in a corner, approached. He had aged in a single night, his youthful features now lined with regret and resolve. "Monsieur Poirot, I cannot apologize enough for the turmoil I caused." Poirot placed a hand on Quentin's shoulder. "You have learned a valuable lesson, Master Quentin. The intent to protect one's inheritance need not lead to deceit. Transparency and dialogue preserve relationships better than fear. I trust you shall strive to honour your uncle's trust going forward." Quentin's eyes brightened. "I shall, monsieur. I have begun drafting a plan to invest in local industry, ensuring our estates flourish for generations to come." Beyond the hearth, a hush settled over the room as everyone contemplated the conversation. At length, Lord Bedlington spoke. "Come, let us break bread together. Today we gather not as suspects or witnesses, but as family and friends. Let this meal mark a new chapter." In the dining hall, a simple luncheon awaited. Roasted pheasant with winter vegetables, fresh bread, and a fine white wine. The long oak table glowed under candlelight, its polished surface reflecting flickers of camaraderie. Poirot sat at Lord Bedlington's right, Quentin opposite, Mrs. Harcourt and Hawkins flanking them. Soft laughter rippled through the hall as gentle conversation resumed. For a moment, the manor felt like sanctuary again. After the meal, Poirot lingered in the drawing-room, where the empty space once reserved for the alchemical glass now held a small framed photograph of Bedlington Manor. Snowy and formidable, he observed Mrs. Harcourt drape a protective cloth over the display stand. "They trust that the glass will be safe in my care," Lord Bedlington mused, joining him. Poirot nodded. "You have handled this crisis with dignity. Now, you safeguard the relic not because it chills the air, but because it teaches caution, and an invitation to wisdom, not terror." He paused, glancing at the velvet cushion. "May it stand as a reminder of how easily ambition can corrode trust, and how compassion can restore it." Lord Bedlington offered a soft smile. "You have given us that gift, Monsieur Poirot. I shall not forget it." The detective inclined his head, absorbing the serenity that now permeated every corner. It was time to depart. As he stepped into the corridor, he ran a final glance over the window that once displayed its icy tapestry. No frost lingered now, only clarity and warmth. The corridors felt inviting. Yet even in tranquillity, Poirot sensed that life's mysteries remained infinite. He retrieved his gloves and cane, exchanging farewells with each member of the household. Their expressions ranged from gratitude to humble resolve, each poised to rebuild what had been shaken. Once outside, Poirot paused upon the front steps, surveying the manor, its stone walls aglow in afternoon light. He touched his bowler hat and whispered, "Adieu, friends. May your hearths remain warm, and your hearts remain open." The carriage wheels began to turn, and as it rolled away, Poirot allowed a serene smile to grace his face. Another enigma lay behind him, solved by patience and insight, while new adventures awaited the little grey cells just beyond the horizon. Chapter 11. Echoes of the alchemist's legacy a week had passed since the recovery of the alchemical fragment, and Bedlington Manor had settled into a tranquil routine. Snow still clung to the eaves, but the hearth's warmth banished lingering chill from corridors and chambers. Poirot, having received cordial thanks from Lord Bedlington, lingered in the library one afternoon, perusing Grunwald's translated manuscripts that Dr. Whitaker had compiled. The detective's keen eyes scanned pages where arcane formulas mingled with philosophical musings on transformation, physical and spiritual. Something in Grunwald's final entry beckoned Poirot's curiosity. A cryptic note suggesting that the glass bore not merely runes, but also a hidden inscription that revealed deeper secrets under a particular light. At Lord Bedlington's invitation, Poirot joined Dr. Whitaker in the greenhouse laboratory, where a large table held the fragment under a glass cloche. Whitaker adjusted a prism, bending sunlight through the windows. "Monsieur Poirot, as you suspected, the runes alone do not represent the full extent of Grunwald's craft. Under refracted light, a secondary etching appears, too fine for the naked eye, yet unmistakable to spectroscopic analysis." He activated a small lamp, its beam directed through the prism. On the glass's surface, a faint pattern emerged, delicate circles connected by lines, reminiscent of a star map. Poirot studied it intently. "Ingenious," Poirot murmured. "Grunwald encoded astronomical symbols, perhaps instructions tied to planetary alignment. The runes activated thermal reaction, while this inscription may indicate timing or purpose." Dr. Whitaker nodded, adjusting magnification. "If one interprets these symbols correctly, One might predict when the glass would react unusually, even without a catalyst. Imagine harnessing that property, a marvel for any chemist or collector. Poirot's little grey cells worked swiftly. Perhaps Halford's intention went beyond theft for profit. If he deciphered this map, he might seek to replicate Grunwald's experiments under favourable celestial conditions. Dr. Whittaker frowned. That is possible, though he claimed ignorance. He surrendered the fragment promptly once confronted. Yet another party might covet this secret, someone versed in both alchemy and astronomy. Quiet descended as each man contemplated the implications. At that moment, Hawkins entered with a note sealed in crimson wax from Lord Bedlington. Poirot read its contents aloud. Preparations for the spring equinox lecture progress. I wish to invite Poirot and Dr. Whittaker to present our findings to local scholars. The lecture is scheduled for April 19th in the village hall. I rely on your expertise to demonstrate the interplay of science and history embodied by Grunwald's work. Poirot tucked the note into his coat. It seems we must share our discovery, alongside cautionary advice, before others awaken to the fragment's hidden power. That evening, the manor's drawing-room brimmed with local dignitaries, clergymen, and scholars. Lord Bedlington presided from an armchair near the fireplace, its glow casting flickers upon his furrowed brow. Poirot and Dr. Whittaker stood before a table draped in burgundy cloth. Beneath lay Grunwald's journal, a slide-mounted prism, and the secured fragment under a glass dome. Parryish gentlemen seated in high-backed chairs leaned forward, curious. Poirot addressed the assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, we present not only an antique glass pane, but an enduring testament to 17th-century ingenuity. Matthias Grunwald sought not the vanity of transmutation alone, but the harmony of celestial motion and earthly substance. With measured gestures, Poirot directed Dr. Whittaker to illuminate the fragment using a calibrated light source. As the beam passed through the prism, the hidden inscription, celestial circles and connecting lines, appeared on a white backdrop. Gasps rippled through the audience. Dr. Whittaker explained, Grunwald's runic etchings, visible here, activate a thermal effect when combined with a specific saltpeter varnish, an innovation we have replicated safely under controlled conditions. The secondary inscription maps lunar phases and planetary conjunctions, guiding when the glass exhibits maximal temperature fluctuation. Should one misuse that knowledge, the consequences could range from minor frost effects to profound chemical reactions beyond conventional laboratory parameters. A hush fell. Then an eager voice inquired, Is there risk that someone might use these instructions for personal gain? Poirot nodded gravely. Yes, monsieur. Our recent experience underscores the fragility of trust. Though we recovered the fragment from Mr. Halford, we cannot assume that all who learn this map will be so inclined to repent. It is our duty to safeguard this knowledge. He paused, scanning faces. Therefore, I propose that we preserve the fragment in a secure scholarly repository, accessible only to those whose integrity is beyond question. Its preservation must not lead to peril. Murmurs of assent and concern filled the room. A venerable professor rose. Monsieur Poirot, as chair of the Historical Society, I commit our archives to safekeeping of both the glass and its documentation. We shall implement measures to restrict access to approved researchers. Applause followed, and Lord Bedlington exhaled in relief. Later, as corridors quieted and candles burned low, Poirot and Dr. Whitaker convened in the library. The detective poured Earl Grey tea and settled into an armchair. "Dr. Whitaker, your brilliance continues to illuminate the path from mystery to understanding." Whitaker smiled. "Your insight guided me, Monsieur Poirot, and together we have ensured that Grunwald's legacy will enlighten rather than endanger." Poirot traced patterns in the steam rising from his cup. "Indeed, but remember, knowledge, like fire or frost, demands responsibility. Those who seek secrets often lack the wisdom to wield them wisely." He rose, offering his hand to Whitaker. "Come, let us ensure that Bedlington Manor's doors remain open to curiosity, yet closed to greed." Under the watchful gaze of winter's receding stars, Poirot felt a profound satisfaction. Another layer of enigma had unfolded, not through crime, but through the pursuit of understanding. The fragment's hidden inscription served as a reminder that beneath alchemy's veil lay the timeless interplay between human curiosity and the cosmos. And in safeguarding such knowledge, Poirot understood that the true enigma of Grunwald's work was not merely scientific, it was moral, requiring discernment and compassion to guide each little grey cell toward the light of truth. Chapter 12. After the lecture, a gentle warmth suffused the drawing-room as the last of the afternoon light waned. Lord Bedlington sat by the hearth, thumbing through correspondence received after the spring equinox lecture. The letters were predominantly appreciative, local scholars and villagers expressing gratitude for the exposition of Grunwald's work, and for the reassurance that the fragment would be preserved responsibly. Mrs. Harcourt moved quietly about, arranging flowers in a vase, while Hawkins polished silver candlesticks under the window's soft glow. Quentin, seated near a side table, perused a ledger that contained details of plans for estate improvements. Poirot, arriving from the library with a cup of Earl Grey, observed this scene with satisfaction. The manor's atmosphere had shifted from one of tension to one of purposeful calm. He approached Lord Bedlington and handed him a sealed note. "Monsieur, this arrived for you an hour ago. The seal bears the Cambridge crest." Bedlington unsealed it, reading attentively. Usishian scanned the lines, his expression brightened. "Well?" Poirot prompted gently. Bedlington set the letter aside. "It is from the Historical Society at Cambridge. They wish to publish a scholarly article on Grunwald's fragment, acknowledging our collaboration and the responsible measures we established. Moreover, they propose housing an exact replica in their university collection, ensuring widespread study without risking the original." He smiled. "A most gratifying proposal." Poirot nodded. "That is excellent news. By sharing a replica, you safeguard the authentic artifact while allowing academic inquiry to flourish." Quentin rose and joined them, setting the ledger aside. "Uncle," he said, "I have drafted foundational agreements with local craftsmen, a miller to supply grain, a weaver to purchase wool, and an agricultural cooperative to share resources. These initiatives should revitalize village livelihoods." His eyes shone with enthusiasm. "With improved commerce, our estates will thrive, and the notion of selling properties will no longer arise." Bedlington placed a hand on Quentin's shoulder. You have proven yourself a capable steward, my boy. I am proud." Poirot smiled inwardly. "Indeed, Master Quentin, you have turned a near calamity into a catalyst for renewal." Their conversation was interrupted when Dr. Whitaker entered, carrying a small wooden box. "Monsieur Poirot, I thought you might appreciate this." He opened the box to reveal a calibrated lens from the laboratory equipment, one used to reveal Grunwald's hidden inscription. "I tested it this morning on a scrap of glass I brought. The results are consistent. However, I find the lens itself to be an elegant instrument, precise, reliable, and yet unobtrusive." Poirot lifted the lens, examining its faceted edges. "A fine tool indeed. It serves as a reminder that discovery often lies in subtlety, rather than spectacle." He returned the lens to Whitaker. "Thank you, my friend. Its continued use will deepen our understanding of alchemy's history, so long as we remain ever mindful of its potential for misuse." Mrs. Harcourt approached with a tray of Petit's Fours and tea. She placed them on a low table near the hearth. "Monsieur Poirot, will you join us for tea before departing?" she asked, her tone deferential yet warm. "I should like that very much, madame," Poirot replied. He poured tea into fine porcelain cups, savouring the familiar aroma of bergamot and steam. As they sipped, a steady knock came at the door. A constable entered, his expression respectful. "Monsieur Bedlington, I have news regarding Mr. Halford. His hearing concluded this morning. The magistrate has sentenced him to 6 months' service at the University Archive, cataloguing rare manuscripts under supervision. He expressed remorse and agreed to collaborate in academic endeavours concerning alchemy's history." Bedlington exhaled with relief. "That is a just sentence, neither too severe nor too lenient. His service will atone for his transgression and benefit scholarly pursuits." Poirot set down his cup. "The resolution balances justice and opportunity. It ensures Halford's knowledge will be used constructively rather than clandestinely." The Hyges afternoon light deepened to a warm amber as they conversed gently about future gatherings. A midsummer fete to celebrate community and newfound collaboration. Mrs. Harcourt nodded thoughtfully. "Shall we invite neighbours from the village? I believe they would welcome the chance to join in festivities after all that has transpired." Quentin clasped his hands. "A splendid idea. We can showcase local crafts and farm produce, creating goodwill and reinforcing the bond between manor and village." Poirot rose, announcing softly, "I must take my leave. I have a case in Warwickshire requiring my attention soon. But I depart with a heart full of contentment. Bedlington Manor is in good hands." Bedlington and Quentin accompanied Poirot to the stone steps at the front entrance. As Poirot donned his overcoat and placed his bowler hat firmly, he turned and regarded the manor, its windows glowing warmly, gardens blanketed in snow, but promising renewal. "Adieu, mes amis. May your efforts bear fruit as surely as the spring follows winter." Quentin offered a final bow. "Safe travels, Monsieur Poirot. Remember us always." Poirot inclined his head, then descended the steps. With each tap of his cane on the slate path, he felt the steady pulse of gratitude, an echo of the alchemist's legacy made manifest through responsible stewardship, compassion, and the unceasing pursuit of truth. Chapter 13. A Whisper from Cambridge. A fortnight had passed since Poirot's departure, and Bedlington Manor had settled into a steady rhythm. Snow still lingered in sheltered hollows, but the promise of spring whispered through the warming air. One afternoon, as Lord Bedlington inspected plans for the upcoming midsummer fete with Quentin, a messenger arrived bearing a sealed envelope stamped with the crest of Cambridge University. The parchment felt cool beneath Lord Bedlington's fingers, and he glanced at Quentin with a raised eyebrow. "Quentin, would you kindly fetch the letter-opener?" Lord Bedlington requested. Quentin retrieved a small ivory opener from a side table and slit the seal. Inside lay an elegant note in a scholar's hand. "Dear Lord Bedlington, our colleagues at the Historical Society have completed preliminary research on peripheral documents related to Grunwald's work. They believe that an overlooked codicil in the original manuscript mentions a companion artifact, an alchemical lens said to fine-tune the glass's refractive properties. They propose that an example may reside within your family's collection, though its provenance is uncertain. Might I request your permission to examine your archives? In particular, I wonder if any items bearing the Grunwald insignia remain undisturbed in the manor. Our quest aims to ensure these relics are properly preserved. Yours sincerely, Professor Edwin Langley, Cambridge University." Lord Bedlington set the note aside, his expression thoughtful. "Quentin, please ask Dr. Whittaker to join me in the library. We shall consider this request." Quentin nodded and hurried off. Lord Bedlington rose and paced toward the broad window overlooking the gardens. The once frozen pane now stood clear, an unassuming sentinel of past intrigues. He turned as Dr. Whittaker entered, holding a leather satchel containing manuscripts and fragments. The doctor's brow was furrowed in professional curiosity. "Monsieur Bedlington," Dr. Whittaker greeted, "I received the same correspondence. Langley's findings suggest that Grunwald may have designed a lens to complement the glass, a tool for selective focus of his written runes under specific illumination." He placed the satchel on a low table and unzipped it, revealing a stack of microfilm copies and annotated marginalia. "If such a lens exists here, it may have accompanied other curiosities your family acquired historically." Lord Bedlington stroked his chin. "My ancestors collected various scientific oddities, but I cannot recall any mention of a lens. Our estate archives include letters, ledgers, and a small chest containing disparate trinkets. We should search there first. Quentin will assist." Dr. Whittaker nodded. Time is of the essence, for Langley's team must prepare to present their extended research at the summer convocation. If we find anything, I will arrange for discreet transport to Cambridge. He paused, glancing at the drawing-room's antique display cases. "Have you examined these recently? Sometimes scholars left inscriptions on seemingly innocuous objects." Lord Bedlington reminded himself of a silver telescope, engraved with the Grunwald crest that rested inconspicuously on a high shelf. He led Dr. Whittaker through the drawing-room, their footsteps muffled by Persian rugs. The telescope's brass fittings glinted. Dr. Whittaker lifted it down and studied the engraving with a magnifying glass. He traced a pattern, a tiny circle bisected by a delicate cross, reminiscent of celestial maps in Grunwald's journal. "This marking matches the code Langley described," Dr. Whittaker murmured. He peered through the eyepiece, rotating a small knob to adjust focus. At a certain angle, a hidden ridge on the opposite rim emerged, a minute compartment containing a slender glass rod. Lord Bedlington gasped softly as Dr. Whitaker extracted the rod, examining its diameter and curvature. "It seems to be the lens in question," Dr. Whitaker said, "crafted with extraordinary precision, its edges ground to focus ultraviolet light. Grunwald's notes describe using such a lens to reveal latent inscriptions on alchemical glass. If Master Halford or any collector acquired this telescope unknowingly, they would not have detected its true purpose." Lord Bedlington's shoulders drooped with relief and excitement. "So, our family retained it all along, hidden in plain sight. We must inform Professor Langley immediately." Dr. Whitaker nodded. "I will sketch the lens's specifications and prepare a photograph for Langley's review. We should also examine our attic storeroom. There may be other items bearing similar insignia." He pocketed the lens carefully in a cloth-lined case. "But for now, the greatest risk is a misinterpretation of its power. We must secure it as we did the fragment, protecting knowledge while guarding against misuse." By twilight, Lord Bedlington, Dr. Whitaker, and Quentin sat around the octagonal library table, lantern light dancing on ancient tomes. Quentin had retrieved a brass-bound chest from a dusty corner. As they unlocked it, bundles of parchment, a brass monocle, and shelves of bound journals emerged. Dr. Whitaker lifted each item for inspection. Letters written in Grunwald's hand, vials once labelled with obscure chemical names, and diagrams of planetary conjunctions. One particularly weathered document bore a header in Latin: Instrumentum Speculare Aeonis, the spectral instrument of the aeon, suggesting the chamber's contents were intended to endure through epochs. "Lord H." Bedlington exhaled, a tremor of awe in his voice. "We hold not one, but multiple vestiges of Grunwald's work. The fragment and this lens speak to his ambition to unite cosmos and matter." He glanced at Quentin. "My boy, your steady resolve in preserving our heritage has borne fruit beyond my imaginings." Quentin offered a shy smile. "I'm honoured to have safeguarded them until scholars can do the same." Dr. Whitaker carefully catalogued each artefact. "With your permission, I will prepare these for delivery to Cambridge under strict supervision. They will serve as primary sources for Langley's research." Lord Bedlington rose, closing the chest gently. "Yes, let us entrust them to Cambridge, confident that our stewardship has preserved their integrity." His gaze fell on the telescope now collapsed upon the table. "And yet, let us also retain copies of any transliterations, and photographs for our estate archives should remain comprehensive." Dr. Whitaker nodded, retrieving a notebook to record details. "A prudent decision. Scholarship flourishes when documentation is shared, even if originals move elsewhere." As lamplight deepened around them, Poirot's words from weeks earlier echoed, "Knowledge demands responsibility." Lord Bedlington, Quentin, and Dr. Whitaker, united in purpose, ensured that Grunwald's alchemy would enlighten future generations rather than tempt those driven by greed. Outside, the first crocuses of spring braved the thawing earth, a promise that even the coldest mysteries could blossom with understanding when tended by compassionate hands. Chapter 14. Dispatch of Relics Dawn broke over Bedlington Manor, pale, sunlight tinting the sky with rose and gold. The air carried a hint of warmth, a promise that winter's grip was loosening. In the library, Lord Bedlington stood behind the oak table, reviewing crates packed with care. Dr. Whittaker's meticulous. Labels marked each box, Grunwald manuscripts, spectral lens, alchemical appurtenances. Quentin hovered nearby, placing leather straps over the lids and checking seal wax one final time. The crates were destined for Cambridge, and each had been constructed to protect fragile contents during the long carriage ride. "Monsieur Bedlington," Dr. Whittaker said, adjusting his spectacles as he consulted a parchment ledger. "I have liaised with Professor Langley. He will arrange for a secure carriage and attendant to meet at the Cambridge gates. Given the nature of these items, we cannot risk delays." His tone held urgency, though tempered by scholarly excitement. "We depart at first light." Lord Bedlington nodded, running a hand through his silver hair. "Agreed. The artifacts must be under responsible supervision. I trust your arrangements, Whittaker. Quentin, ensure the convoy's route avoids muddy roads. Spring thaws can slow travel." He glanced toward the window, where the garden slumbered under a patchy frost. "We must also inform Mrs. Harcourt and Hawkins, so they can oversee the manor in our absence." Quentin lifted a crate, rolling it gently onto a woolen blanket placed upon the library floor. "I will see to it, Uncle. I will ask Mrs. Harcourt to bring tea for the journey." He paused, taking in the weight, both physical and symbolic, of their task. "It feels as though we are sending a piece of history away, yet I know it is for the best." Dr. Whittaker offered a reassuring smile. "The legacy remains here, for we have copies, diagrams, and catalogued journals. The originals will broaden the scope of Grunwald scholarship." He placed a comforting hand on Quentin's shoulder. "Parting is necessary when knowledge benefits the many." As they finalized the packing, Hawkins entered carrying a tray of breakfast pastries on a silver platter. The butler's expression was solemn but proud. "Monsieur Bedlington, Master Quentin, Dr. Whittaker, Mrs. Harcourt has prepared provisions for the road. The stables are warm. The horses rested. All is ready for your departure." Lord Bedlington accepted a croissant and nodded. "Thank you, Hawkins. Your diligence ensures our journey begins smoothly." He turned to Quentin. "Are you ready, my boy?" Quentin swallowed, his gaze drifting toward the crates. "Ready, Uncle." He took a pastry, and for a moment they shared breakfast in quiet reflection. The manor felt spacious without Poirot's presence, yet his influence lingered, an echo in each careful decision. By mid-morning, the horses were hitched to a sturdy carriage bolstered with springs custom-designed to minimize jolts. Dr. Whittaker took his position beside the driver, clutching a leather satchel containing delicate instruments. Quentin climbed into the back with the crates, fastening straps and securing blankets. Lord Bedlington settled opposite Dr. Whittaker, adjusting his overcoat against the chill. Hawkins and Mrs. Harcourt stood at the carriage door, their expressions both proud and wistful. "Godspeed," Mrs. Harcourt said, her voice thick with emotion. She clasped her hands as if in prayer. "May these treasures reach Cambridge safely." Lord Bedlington inclined his head. "Thank you, Mildred. Your care for our heritage has been invaluable." He offered a final nod as the driver cracked his whip. The horses lurched forward, the carriage rolling over the gravel drive. Quentin, peering out the window, watched the manor recede, its ivy-clad walls and frost-kissed gardens fading into the distance. For the first hour, the road was firm, flanked by fields quilted in early green. Dr. Whittaker leaned forward speaking, quietly about preservation protocols and anticipated research outcomes. Quentin listened, absorbing details of cataloguing procedures and the significance of the spectral lens within Grunwald's broader oeuvre. The crates, cushioned by blankets, remained undisturbed, treasures poised to illuminate alchemical history. As the carriage approached the parish crossroads, Lord Bedlington consulted a map. "We must avoid the landslips near Whittendale. Take the eastern route through Milton Vale." The driver bowed his head, guiding the horses onto the narrower lane. Quentin watched the countryside blur, farmers tending ploughs, lambs gambolling in pastures, and stone bridges arching over meandering streams. The landscape spoke of renewal, every blossom a testament that winter's mysteries still birthed spring's promise. At midday, they paused at an inn in Milton Vale. The crates were unloaded into a private chamber, where a Cambridge courier, an austere man in a woolen coat, awaited. He inspected each crate, ticking items off a parchment list. Dr. Whittaker and Lord Bedlington supervised, verifying seals and confirming documentation. The courier's eyes lingered on the spectral lens, its polished glass gleaming under candlelight. "Monsieur Bedlington," the courier said, voice measured, "Cambridge will be prepared. Professor Langley awaits our arrival. Security measures have been arranged. These relics shall be displayed only for approved scholarship." Lord Bedlington exhaled, relief softening his features. "Thank you. We place them in your care with confidence." Quentin secured the crates once more, and shared a warm meal with Dr. Whittaker and the courier in the inn's parlour. They spoke of manuscripts and lectures, of Grunwald's influence on modern chemistry, and of the village fete scheduled upon their return. Quentin felt a surge of excitement. He would present preliminary findings and showcase how the community had rallied. To honour their heritage, when dusk fell, the party resumed their journey. The carriage rattled over cobblestones as they entered Cambridge under a crescent moon. Gas lamps illuminated the narrow streets, and towering spires rose against the sky like sentinels of knowledge. The courier guided the carriage to a secure university building where guards awaited. Crates were unloaded into a chamber lined with oak shelves and iron clasps, fitting for such precious contents. Grateful farewells were exchanged. Lord Bedlington shook the courier's hand. "Thank you for your care. May these relics inspire minds as they once inspired Grunwald." The courier nodded. "They shall be honoured here. Good evening, Lord." Dr. Whittaker and Quentin followed Lord Bedlington through narrow streets toward their lodging, the hush of academia enveloping them. That night, as candles burned in their chambers, Quentin reflected on the day's passage, how an artifact once hidden in plain sight had journeyed to a scholarly haven. He realized that stewardship of knowledge was a solemn duty, one that demanded both humility and foresight. Outside, the bells of a college chapel tolled midnight, echoing across spired walkways. Within the hush of Cambridge, Grunwald's legacy awakened anew. A fragment of Bedlington Manor's past now shone at the heart of intellectual pursuit. Chapter 15. Echoes in the village spring's first warmth settled gently over Bedlington Manor and the surrounding village. The frost had long since receded, replaced by tender green shoots pushing through thawed earth. Quentin moved briskly through the manor's winding halls, coordinating final preparations for the midsummer fete. Tables draped in linen awaited local crafts, woodworkers, potters, and weavers, and Mrs. Harcourt oversaw the menu: fresh spring vegetables, tender lamb, and delicate pastries. Even Hawkins seemed lighter of heart, humming as he arranged polished silverware in neat rows. Outside, a handful of villagers lingered near the manor gate, eager to help. Among them was Mr. Aldridge, the miller, who offered to loan his carts for transporting tables and benches. Mrs. Whitcomb, the baker's wife, arrived with crates of freshly baked rolls, the aroma of yeast still warm to the touch. In the village square, musicians tuned violins and fiddles, anticipating a day of lively tunes beneath lantern-lit stalls. The sense of community was palpable. Everyone had a role, and none took it lightly. Yet even amid festivity's promise, a subtle tension lingered. Rumours had surfaced that certain outsiders, collectors and antiquarians from towns beyond, planned to attend the fete under the guise of interest in local crafts. Some whispered that these strangers still sought whispers of Grunwald's lost secrets, though no proof existed. Quentin overheard two elders debating whether to deny entry to anyone without a local pedigree. Mrs. Whitcomb insisted on hospitality, while Mr. Thorne, the blacksmith, argued for caution. Quentin resolved to keep a watchful eye. The harmony born of shared purpose must not be undermined by lingering fear. That same afternoon, Lord Bedlington received a letter from Professor Langley in Cambridge. The envelope bore Cambridge's crest, and Quentin noted his uncle's eyes sharpen as he broke the seal. Later, in the library, Lord Bedlington read aloud. "Dear Lord Bedlington, the artefacts you entrusted have proven invaluable. Dr. Whitaker's annotations allowed our scholars to confirm Grunwald's hypothesis regarding the interplay of ultraviolet spectra and alchemical transmutation. Moreover, a secondary discovery emerged: references to a third relic, an inscribed copper amulet rumoured to regulate the temperature of the glass under moonlight. Several codices suggest its location near an isolated chapel ruin on the manor's northern boundary. Should you wish to explore further, we invite you to send a small team to excavate and preserve this amulet. Its recovery could complete our understanding of Grunwald's magnum opus. With gratitude, Professor Edwin Langley." A hush fell over the library as Lord Bedlington folded the letter. Quentin, standing nearby, exhaled. "An amulet, uncle. I recall seeing copper fragments in the attic's trunk, broken pieces, tarnished and unmarked." Dr. Whitaker, seated at a writing desk, adjusted his spectacles. "The chapel ruins on the northern boundary, long overlooked by many. If Langley is correct, Grunwald may have hidden the amulet there deliberately, leaving only cryptic references. In his notes." Lord Bedlington pressed a hand to his chin. "We must balance this excavation against the fate's demands. Yet, if the amulet completes our record, we cannot ignore it." He looked at Quentin. "My boy, can you assemble a small party, perhaps Hawkins, Dr. Whitaker, and one or two reliable villagers, to investigate at first light? We must act swiftly, for as the fates draw nearer, the ruins could be trodden underfoot." Quentin nodded. "I will gather a team tonight. It will be done." That evening, a fire burned in the parlour as they gathered maps and torches. Quentin, selected Hawkins, steady and observant. Mrs. Harcourt recommended Thomas Miller, whose days among the fields had taught him to read hidden terrains, and Dr. Whitaker secured specialized lanterns with ultraviolet filters to reveal faint inscriptions. Each accepted quietly, aware of the importance and potential danger of their task. Before dawn, they assembled near the manor's stable. Torches lit, they moved northward along a winding trail that led beyond the formal gardens, past an orchard of blossoming apple trees. Their footprints marked soft earth, dew glistening on grass as birds began their morning song. Soon they reached a stone arch, half swallowed by ivy, remnants of the ancient chapel. Only crumbled walls remained, moss-covered and leaning as though weary with age. Beneath the lintel, a narrow doorway led into a dark interior, where wildflowers had taken root among fallen stones. Dr. Whitaker held his ultraviolet lens aloft, sweeping light across walls etched with indecipherable symbols. These markings, see how they glow faintly? They correspond to Grunwald's star map, adjusted for this location. Hawkins brushed moss from a corner stone, revealing a small copper imprint, a circle etched too thin for daylight to catch. "Here," he whispered. Quentin knelt. Using a soft brush, he cleaned the surrounding surface. An incised image of a stylized sunfish and spiraling glyphs emerged. "Grunwald's insignia," Dr. Whitaker murmured. He marked this spot deliberately. They shifted aside slabs and stones until a shallow cavity appeared. Inside lay a small copper amulet, tarnished but intact. Its surface bore the same celestial inscriptions as the glass fragment. A sun in the centre, encircled by miniature runes. Quentin held it gently. Despite morning chill, the metal felt strangely warm to his fingers, as though attuned to some latent energy. Mrs. Harcourt's voice, calling urgently, echoed from the entrance. "Quentin, come quickly. There is someone at the gate." They rose, amulet secured in a linen cloth, and hurried back along the path. As they neared the manor, two suspicious figures loomed near the gate, a man in a dark coat and another clutching a satchel. Their postures and furtive glances suggested illicit intent. Quentin's heart pounded. Without drawing weapons, Thomas Miller stepped forward, voice calm but firm. "Can we help you, gentlemen?" The man in the dark coat exchanged a glance with his companion. "Good morning," he replied smoothly. "We are travellers seeking refreshment. Is there a place we might rest?" Hawkins shifted slightly. "The midsummer fete is not yet open. Unless you have a village invitation, I'm afraid I cannot admit you further." Dr. Whitaker stepped forward, the copper amulet hidden beneath his coat. "I will fetch Lord Bedlington." The strangers hesitated. Seeing their uneasy glances, Quentin realized these were likely the outsiders Mrs. Whitcomb and Mr. Thorne had warned about. Collectors hoping for whispers of new secrets. He moved quietly to Dr. Whitaker's side. "Let us return inside," he said. "We will offer you tea in the garden, though our treasures remain under careful watch." The men nodded, though eyes flicked toward the manor's windows, lingering on wooden shutters and stone ledges. Mrs. Harcourt appeared at the doorway, ushering them inside. The small excavation team exchanged relieved looks, knowing that the amulet and the manor's legacy remained secure for now. As they closed the gate and turned to enter, Quentin held the copper charm aloft, its warm surface reflecting morning light. He felt the weight of responsibility settle upon him anew. The Fates' festivities and the promise of summer lay just beyond, but first they had preserved another fragment of Grunwald's heritage, and thwarted those who might misuse it. Inside Bedlington Manor, life resumed its gentle rhythm. Yet beneath the laughter and music of the upcoming fete, a renewed vigilance took root. For the legacy of the alchemist, like spring's first bloom, demanded both wonder and care, and those who honoured it would ensure that Grunwald's echoes in the village would endure far beyond any fleeting frost. Chapter 16. A Celebration of Renewal. The first light of midsummer dawn filtered through the tall mullioned windows of Bedlington Manor, casting warm beams upon the polished oak floors. The air was heavy with the scent of roses and lavender from the gardens, and the distant hum of activity drifted through the corridors. Today marked the long-awaited fete, a testament to the village's resilience, the family's steadfastness, and the careful stewardship of Grunwald's legacy. Quentin, already dressed in a crisp waistcoat and linen trousers, hurried down the grand staircase. His heart thrummed with anticipation and a touch of nervousness. After weeks of preparation, the moment had arrived to unite manor and village in joyous celebration. He found Mrs. Harcourt in the drawing-room, arranging fresh garlands along the mantelpiece. She turned with a bright smile. "Quentin, everything is in place. The tables in the courtyard are set, and the villagers have arrived with their crafts. Lord Bedlington is meeting the first guests on the terrace." Her lavender-scented fingers flitted over an arrangement of wildflowers. A final flourish before the doors opened. Quentin nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Harcourt. I shall see to the amulet's display before greeting the guests." He crossed to the study, where Dr. Whitaker was adjusting a protective glass case set atop a mahogany pedestal. Inside lay the copper amulet, cradled on a velvet cushion, its intricate runic designs gleaming beneath the midday sun. Dr. Whitaker glanced up, eyes alight with scholarly pride. "Good morning, Quentin," he greeted. "I've verified that, under this filtration, the amulet's inscriptions glow faintly. We have placed a small mirrored panel behind it, so visitors may see how the glyphs interact with sunlight." He tapped the glass gently. "It will serve as a reminder of balance, how light reveals secrets only when guided by wisdom." Quentin offered a grateful smile. "Your care ensures its safe display. Let us hope our guests heed that lesson today." He straightened his collar and followed Dr. Whitaker out to the courtyard, where the manor's kitchens had prepared a long table laden with platters of new season produce. Asparagus, strawberries, and honey-glazed ham. White linens fluttered in the mild breeze, and lanterns strung above promised charm when dusk fell. 20 yards away, villagers had arranged stalls of their wares. Mrs. Whitcomb's freshly baked pies, Mr. Aldridge's sacks of flour, and stalls of hand-woven cloth dyed in vivid blues and greens. Musicians tuned fiddles and flutes near a small pavilion draped in ivy. Quentin paused to greet familiar faces. Thomas Miller, who had assisted with the amulet excavation. Mrs. Daniels, presenting a display of honey jars and beeswax candles. And Parsons, who proudly exhibited a newly constructed wooden bench, the manor's front porch. Each nodded warmly, their faces alight with pride and anticipation. A soft fanfare sounded, and Lord Bedlington emerged onto the terrace, his silver hair catching the morning light. He raised a hand in greeting, and a hush fell as guests, including local dignitaries and a handful of vetted antiquarians, assembled on the manicured lawn. Quentin guided Dr. Whittaker to the amulet's display, while Hawkins stationed himself at the gates to ensure no uninvited visitors slipped through. Lord Bedlington stepped forward, addressing the gathering in a steady voice. "Friends, neighbours, and esteemed guests, today we celebrate not only the bounty of midsummer, but the spirit of community and shared heritage. Our village has flourished through mutual support, just as knowledge flourishes when shared responsibly. Let this fete honour both the labour of our hands and the wisdom of our hearts." Applause rippled through the crowd. Quentin breathed deeply, feeling a swell of pride. He moved beside the amulet display as the first attendees approached. A local schoolteacher, Miss Pevensey, peered through the glass, marvelling at the glowing glyphs. "It is extraordinary," she whispered to Dr. Whittaker. "To think this was hidden here all along." Dr. Whittaker nodded. Indeed, Grunwald encoded wisdom in both his runes and his instructions. We hope that by sharing a replica of the glass and presenting the amulet here, future generations appreciate the blend of science and conscience. He gestured to small illustrated pamphlets available on a side table, detailing the history of Grunwald's work and the importance of ethical inquiry. Meanwhile, Quentin circulated among the villagers. He paused at Mr. Thorne's blacksmith booth, where a forging demonstration was underway. Sparks flew as Thorne shaped a horseshoe, and a crowd had gathered, some curious, others hopeful. Quentin offered a respectful nod. "Your craftsmanship honours the fate, Mr. Thorne. The bench you built stands beautifully in the garden." Thorne wiped sweat from his brow. "Thank you, Master Quentin. I confess I was at odds when we discussed security. But seeing everyone here working together, I realise that openness and vigilance need not conflict. We can welcome guests while safeguarding what matters most." Quentin smiled, heartened by Thorne's change of heart. The day unfolded in harmonious activity. Children chased butterflies through flower beds. Villagers sampled Miss Whitcomb's pies. Musicians' tunes drifted like dappled sunshine. A group of antiquarians lingered near the manor's facade, admiring carved corbels and window tracery. They glanced occasionally toward the amulet display. Respectful but eager to learn, Quentin watched them carefully, noting their demeanour. Polite, inquisitive, and bound by the invitation protocol. As midday merged into afternoon, tables were laden with fresh lemonade and iced ices, and the villagers joined in dances beneath hanging lanterns. Lord Bedlington moved among the crowd, conversing with guests and offering words of thanks. Quentin seized a brief moment to approach his uncle. "Uncle, all proceeds from the market stalls are to be donated to fund village improvements, as you planned." Bedlington clasped his nephew's shoulder. "You have orchestrated this with care, Quentin. I am proud. Both village and manor shine today in unity." Dr. Whittaker found them then, reviewing a tome from the Historical Society. Langley sent word. They will publish a brief notice commending Bedlington Manor's stewardship of Grunwald's relics. Your fate serves as an exemplary model for integrating scholarship and community celebration. Quentin exchanged a triumphant glance with Lord Bedlington. That is splendid news. May our example inspire others to balance progress with preservation. Later, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, lanterns were lit across the courtyard. The amulet's inscriptions glowed faintly beneath the shifting light, and Dr. Whitaker guided small groups to witness its subtle brilliance. Children knelt on rugs spread at the base of the display, peering through magnifying glasses at the delicate copper engravings. The festival's laughter and music rose in a gentle crescendo, echoing through the gardens. At last, twilight embraced the manor. Villagers joined in a circle for a communal dance, their voices mingling in a simple hymn of thanks. Quentin, standing beside Mrs. Harcourt, watched as the choir of lanterns and firefly lights cast a soft glow upon uplifted faces. He allowed himself a moment of reflection. The trials of frost and theft had given way to renewal and unity. Bedlington Manor's legacy remained secure, guided by the little grey cells of truth, the careful hand of scholarship, and the embrace of community. As the final chorus faded, Lord Bedlington raised a goblet of elderflower wine in a silent toast. Around him, candles flickered, and hopeful eyes met his own. Quentin joined the toast, lifting his cup in gratitude. In that instant, he understood that the true elixir of Grunwald's work was not cold alchemy, but the warmth of collective purpose. And under the midsummer stars, Bedlington Manor celebrated not just a fete, but a future forged by respect, knowledge, and shared humanity. Chapter 17. The fruits of vigilance, spring's promise, had blossomed into summer's fullness by the time. Bedlington Manor's courtyard returned to its usual tranquillity. The fete, with its laughter and music, was but a fond memory. Yet its spirit lingered in every rosebush and cobbled path. Quentin stood on the terrace one early morning, the air redolent with honeysuckle and fresh-cut hay, as he reviewed a sheaf of letters collected over the past weeks. Each envelope bore the Cambridge seal, dispatches from Professor Langley, Dr. Whitaker's annotations, and correspondence from grateful villagers. Quentin allowed himself a small smile. His efforts, and those of his household, had yielded a harvest of goodwill and promise. He descended the broad stone steps into the terraced gardens, where gentle sunlight dappled the gravel paths. Mrs. Harcourt awaited him by the herb bed, tending basil and lavender. She offered a copper mug of mint tea. "Good morning, Master Quentin. The flower beds look splendid. You have done wonders here." Quentin accepted the tea. "Thank you, Mrs. Harcourt. Your guidance has been invaluable. The villagers' gardens bloom more robustly this year, thanks in part to the renovation of the irrigation channels. The millers' generosity ensured enough grain for all, and the weavers' new dye vats brought bright life to our linens." Mrs. Harcourt nodded, her silver bun catching the light. "And the manor itself seems to stand taller. No longer burdened by fear, but brimming with hope." They walked toward the pergola draped in wisteria. Beneath its arch, a wooden bench, crafted by Mr. Thorne, awaited. Quentin paused to admire its fine joinery and smooth finish. "He outdid himself," Quentin remarked. "He told me it is the first of many communal projects he intends to undertake with the Blacksmiths' Guild." A distant church bell tolled the hour. Quentin inhaled deeply and turned back to Mrs. Harcourt. "I must deliver these letters to my uncle before he begins his morning rounds. The first concerns a shipment arriving from Cambridge tomorrow. Replicas of Grunwald's lens for the village. School's science curriculum. An excellent initiative, Mrs. Harcourt said. Young minds need both curiosity and caution. Grunwald's legacy deserves to inspire, not intimidate. Quentin nodded. Precisely. I shall take this to him at once. He climbed the marble steps into the library, where Lord Bedlington sat behind the oak desk, examining a parchment map. The morning sun streamed through the cleared window, illuminating dust motes and the faint silhouette of ivy on the glass. Quentin noticed that where once the frozen pane had dazzled with frost, it now stood clear, a metaphor that had not escaped him. "Good morning, Uncle," Quentin greeted, placing the letters on the desk. Lord Bedlington looked up, his eyes bright with affection and purpose. "Quentin," he said, smiling, "tell me of these arrivals." Quentin handed him the first missive. Cambridge confirms that under Dr. Whittaker's supervision, they have produced 10 replicas of Grunwald's spectral lens. These will be lodged at the village school, the local parish hall, and our own library. They request that I oversee their installation in coordination with the headmaster. Lord Bedlington unfolded the letter, reading silently. He exhaled, pleased. This is splendid. By equipping our institutions with these lenses, we foster scientific inquiry while controlling access to the relic's true purpose. A fine balance of education and responsibility. Quentin handed over the next letter, and this one from Professor Langley. He reports that Dr. Whittaker's documentation has been published in the Journal of Historical Instruments. They credit Bedlington Manor's preservation efforts as exemplary, mentioning the alchemical fragment, the spectral lens, and the recently recovered amulet in Cambridge archives. Lord Bedlington's expression softened with pride. To think that our humble manor contributed to such scholarship. It warms my heart. We have transformed a household mystery into collective enlightenment. Quentin sat across from him. Indeed, it seems Grunwald's work continues to ripple outward, much as you predicted when Monsieur Poirot first spoke of human frailty and compassion. Lord Bedlington's gaze grew distant. Ah, Monsieur Poirot, I have not forgotten his counsel. I wrote to him last week, inviting him to visit when his travels bring him near. I suspect he may pass through London this autumn. Quentin smiled. I hope he comes. His little grey cells taught us much about empathy and intelligence. Before Lord Bedlington could reply, a soft rap sounded at the door. Hawkins entered, bowing. My lord, Dr. Whittaker awaits in the conservatory, requesting your presence. He says he has urgent news. Lord Bedlington nodded. Thank you, Hawkins. He rose, motioning Quentin to follow. They made their way to the conservatory, where Dr. Whittaker stood beside a brass-bound seed chest, his spectacles perched on his nose. Good morning, Dr. Whittaker greeted. He held a small vellum scroll bound with twine. I apologize for the early summons, but Cambridge has uncovered new insight into Grunwald's amulet. They performed tests under controlled moonlight and found that, when paired with the spectral glass, the copper's thermal resonance can purify water and promote accelerated plant growth, unless misused to freeze liquids in harmful ways. They believe that selecting certain wavelengths can yield diverse effects, both life-affirming and hazardous. Lord Bedlington furrowed his brow. So the amulet's power extends beyond mere symbolism. It has practical potential, beneficial if guided by wisdom, but dangerous in reckless hands. Dr. Whitaker inclined his head. Precisely. They propose replicating the amulet's design, using inert metals for agricultural experiments. It could revolutionize farming practices in regions prone to drought. But the original must remain sealed in Cambridge archives. London's Antiquities. Council wants to include our manuscripts in a travelling exhibition next year. Quentin stepped closer, enthusiasm brightening his voice. Imagine gifts to the wider world. Agricultural innovation born from 17th century alchemy. Lord Bedlington. We could collaborate with the parish to test inert replicas on the manor's fields this autumn. Lord Bedlington's gaze softened with admiration for his nephew's vision. A remarkable prospect. Let us proceed in consultation with Dr. Whitaker and local farmers to pilot the programme. We must harness the potential responsibly, as we have with Grunwald's other relics. Dr. Whitaker scribbled a note in his journal. I shall contact Cambridge to coordinate prototypes. I also suggest we establish a small endowment for the village school to support scientific study, ensuring future generations maintain both knowledge and ethics. Lord Bedlington placed a hand on the scroll. Yes, let us do that. Quentin, I am grateful for your leadership and foresight. Together, we will honour Grunwald's legacy and serve our community. Quentin bowed his head, respectfully. Thank you, uncle. I pledge to remain vigilant and compassionate as Monsieur Poirot taught us, to ensure that knowledge serves humanity rather than imperiling it. A shaft of sunlight illuminated the scroll's ribbon. Dr. Whitaker secured it in his jacket pocket. Shall we tell Mrs. Harcourt? She must prepare an announcement for the parish meeting tomorrow. Lord Bedlington nodded. Indeed. Let us share these plans, rooted in alchemy, but flourishing in practicality. He turned to Quentin and Dr. Whitaker. Determination and hope mingling in his gaze. We embark on a new chapter, one where science, heritage, and community converge in service of the common good. As they filed from the conservatory, the manor seemed to shine more brightly. Sunbeams dancing on polished floors, the starlit engraving of hidden runes, etched no longer only in glass or copper, but in the village's living spirit. In that moment, the fruits of vigilance, the lessons of frost, theft, and recovery manifested in purpose-driven action. The legacy of Matthias Grunwald, guided by compassion and curiosity, would continue to shape Bedlington Manor and its people for generations to come. Chapter 18. A Legacy Secured. Summer's golden haze drifted across Bedlington Manor, settling on flower beds overflowing with lavender and rose. The courtyard, once alive with fete laughter, now lay serene, its lanterns stored for another season. Quentin stood at the edge of the herb garden, inhaling the sweet fragrance of basil and mint. The past months, which had begun with a frozen window and stolen relics, now felt distant. Yet their lessons endured in every carefully tended flower, and each scholarly pursuit that sprang from Grunwald's work. Lord Bedlington joined him, leaning on the wrought-iron fence as he surveyed the manor's grounds. "Ooh, Quentin," he said, voice gentle with pride, "you have guided our family through trials that demanded courage and wisdom. We have safeguarded Grunwald's artifacts, shared knowledge responsibly, and strengthened our bonds with the village. Now, we stand at the brink of a new era." Quentin nodded, recalling their recent plan to pilot inert replicas of the spectral lens in the fields. "Tomorrow, the village meeting will formalize our agricultural program. The school will receive 2 replicas for science demonstrations, and local farmers will join Dr. Whitaker in testing copper-infused irrigation methods. It feels as though every element, garden, greenhouse, and community, has aligned toward growth." "Indeed," Lord Bedlington agreed. He placed a hand on Quentin's shoulder. "Your foresight honours both tradition and innovation. I remember how startled we were when Poirot revealed the window's secret. Since then, through shards of glass, spectral lenses, and copper amulets, we have learned that Grunwald's work transcends mere alchemy. It is a testament to the balance between curiosity and caution." Quentin's gaze drifted to the veranda where Mrs. Harcourt tended potted herbs. She offered a respectful nod as they approached. "Good evening, sirs," she greeted them. "Dinner is nearly ready. I wager the table will be summoning our appetites soon." They followed her into the kitchen, where the aroma of summer vegetables, roasting and fresh bread baking filled the air. Mrs. Harcourt's expertise had ensured every meal nourished both body and spirit. As they passed the hutches where Hawkins polished fine silverware, Quentin noticed that each utensil bore a small engraving, a reminder of the manor's renewed commitment to detail and stewardship. Later, in the drawing-room, Lord Bedlington rested beside the hearth, while Quentin retrieved a volume from the bookshelf. It was Grunwald's journal, bound in tarnished leather. Beside it lay a modern notebook filled with Dr. Whitaker's annotations and transcription. Quentin placed both on the table and regarded them thoughtfully. Lord Bedlington offered a wry smile. "Our ancestors acquired that journal seeking arcane power. We, however, have found practical wisdom and a sense of communal purpose." Quentin opened Grunwald's entries and read aloud a passage translated by Dr. Whitaker. "True transformation occurs not through solitude, but through shared endeavour. The alchemist who hides his work destroys its potential." He closed the book and looked at his uncle. "We lived that truth. From the moment that pain froze, we could have pursued profit or secrecy. Instead, we chose transparency, collaboration, and compassion. A hush fell between them, broken only by the crackle of logs in the hearth. Outside, the moon glinted on the manor's stone roof, illuminating windows where the warm glow of lamplight promised rest. Quentin rose and retrieved a glass of cider from the sideboard. He raised it to Lord Bedlington. "To heritage, yes, but also to future generations, who will learn that knowledge is a gift when shared wisely." Lord Bedlington accepted the glass with a nod. "To memory of Mr. Halford's repentance, to Dr. Whitaker's scholarship, to Mrs. Harcourt's dedication, and to the villagers' unwavering support. We could not have reached this day alone." Quentin drank deeply, savouring the sweet tang of summer fruit. "And to the little grey cells that guided us," he added, recalling Poirot's counsel. "May we never forget that logic and empathy, when combined, dissolve the coldest of obstacles." They sat in companionable silence until the clock chimed midnight. Quentin closed Grunwald's journal, placing it carefully back on the shelf. The copper amulet and spectral lens, replicas, rested safely in the manor's new exhibit case, ready for students and scholars to explore. In the distance, crickets sang their nocturnal refrain, while fireflies flickered among the garden's edge. Lord Bedlington rose, laying a hand on Quentin's shoulder. "It is late, my boy. Tomorrow we guide another generation toward discovery. For now, let us rest, content that Bedlington Manor's legacy stands secure." Quentin nodded, glancing at the book-lined walls, the hearth's gentle glow, and the open window through which summer air whispered. "Yes, uncle, let us sleep, knowing our stewardship has honoured both past and future." As they extinguished candles and closed doors, Bedlington Manor settled into peaceful darkness. The frozen window had thawed long ago, but its story remained, etched in memory, a testament to human resilience. Beneath the moon's silvery light, the manor's spires and gardens rested, guardians of curiosity guided by compassion. In that serene night, as the village slept and stars shimmered overhead, the legacy of Grunwald and the lessons of truth, community, and careful vigilance could echo across generations, unbroken and profound.